But how many people have ever been born? This many, 117 billion. But out of all of these people, out of everyone who has ever existed, this is how many you will ever meet. You are a stranger to your own species. This is a video about how you will be forgotten. It's about the ghosts that surround us and how they're getting closer. Our journey begins 2,500 kilometers above the surface of the sun. There, a hot layer of ionized gas begins its reach millions of kilometers out into space. It's called the solar corona. And normally, it's outshone by the rest of the sun because it gives off just 1/1,000,000th as much light. But during an eclipse, it can be seen. When you are eclipsed, your own sort of corona will remain as well. The memories people have of you, your treasure and junk, emails and texts you sent, the fact that your child has a nose like yours, every appearance you made in the background of a stranger's photo, those are all traces of you that shine while you're alive, but can also continue long after you're gone.
That was only the first.
Douglas Hofstadter called them your solar corona. I love that phrase because it makes a cosmological phenomenon personal by literally including you.
What?
How long will you be here?
What am I doing?
Well, that's why I made this clock. It tells the time, but it also tells your time. Just answer a few questions, and then, when it's ready, push the red button, and the clock will begin counting down the seconds you have left to live, approximately. Now, whenever you want, you can switch it to show the time, but that's not nearly as fun. Also, this clock never forgets. If you take away its power, it'll go dark, but it's still thinking about you. Next time you plug it in, it will pick right back up where it should be. Now, if you would like a practical, retro memento mori, you can pre-order one of these now.
Whoa.
Omnis vulnerant ultima necat is Latin, and it refers to these passing seconds. It means each of these wounds, the last kills. Mox nox means soon it will be night, and it will. But while this is ticking down, something else is ticking up. The number of ghosts in the world. Your nominal ghost is your name. It's out there representing you whether you're there or not. It won't haunt the world forever though. As we've often been reminded, you die twice. Once when your heart stops beating, and then again, usually sometime later, when your name is spoken for the last time. But whose name has been remembered the longest? Well, signed here on this 5,000-year-old tablet is the oldest written name we've ever found. Kushum, the first named character we know in the written history of humanity, probably. It's not entirely clear whether Kushum is the name of a person or just the title of an office holder. You know, if you want to be really sure, a generation or two later, this tablet was made. It contains 3 names, Gal Sol and 2 people he enslaved, Inpop X and a woman named Zakaljar. These individuals are the reigning champs of avoiding the second death. And with archival practices and technologies being what they are today, your name could conceivably last just as long as these have already. But you know, I gotta say, if you want your ghosts to last longer, it helps to bend the truth a little bit. Toby Jukanov built this interactive globe that shows the most famous person born in every location. Fame is based on Wikipedia data, how long their article is, how many languages it's in, how many visits it gets per day, stuff like that. By the way, out of everyone alive right now, about this many of us, almost exactly a quarter teaspoon, are mentioned on Wikipedia. Now let's zoom in on Stillwell, Kansas. Ooh, hey there, good looking. But here's the thing. I wasn't born in Stillwell. I grew up there. I lived there from ages 5 to 18, but I was born in Kansas City. For a while, a lot of things online said that I was born in Stillwell, so that's probably how I wound up here. But should I correct it? What's more important, the truth or a little lie that prolongs and enhances my nominal ghost? Maybe the truth. Because even if my name is forgotten, images of me may stick around. And that is your second ghost, your likeness, figurative portrayals of what you look like. Now, we have no idea what most people who have lived looked like. Long ago, no records were made. Eventually, some were and have survived. So, who's the earliest known person where, we know what they looked like? Well, it's probably Gudea. He was an ancient Sumerian ruler, and 27 4,000-year-old statues of him have been found in southern Iraq. They stand out not just for their craftsmanship, but also for the fact that earlier depictions of human forms are either more abstract or generalized. But because these depictions of Gudea are more realistic, are so similar to each other, and have been found spread so widely, it's tenable that they're similar to the actual face of the actual individual as he appeared in life, the first known illustrated person in our history. Even if your figural ghosts don't stick around as long as Gudea's have, things that look kind of like you might. I'm talking about your genetic ghost, your personal genomic variation that can be carried on by your descendants. Now, interestingly, even if your progeny are especially fecund, your genetic ghost probably won't stick around that long. Just how much of your unique genetic code winds up in your grandkids, for example, depends partly on chance. It could be anywhere from 23 to 27%. Your great-grandkids will only contain 9 to 14% of you. Your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren will on average be no more similar to you than you are to any stranger. In fact, it is at that distance that it becomes possible to be genetically left behind, for absolutely no personal chunks of your genome to be present in anyone. More than 70% of your ancestors from 11 generations ago aren't in you at all. So you're not so much the genetic foundation on which your progeny sit as you are their baby teeth, a thing that served a purpose but was destined to then fall out and be set aside. Where should you be buried if you want to become a fossil? Fossils last a long time. Your legacy could be representing our species in a cool bony pose in a museum millions of years from now. Well, as it turns out, fossilization, the mineralizing of bones into rocky ghosts, is an exceedingly rare occurrence. Bill Bryson puts it this way: less than 0.1% of a species is ever lucky enough to become fossilized, which means that millions of years from now, all that will be left of every single person alive today in the US will probably just be about 60 fossilized bones, not even one full human skeleton. The best way to improve your chances of becoming a fossil are to be buried rapidly and deeply with no coffin under the seafloor of a still mass of water at low elevation where sediment deposits will be swift and fine and oxygen levels low. Some locations that fit this bill are parts of the Black Sea, the Gulf of Mexico where the Mississippi disgorges, and the mangrove swamps along the northern coast of Australia. But even then, there's risk, right? Earth is an active, churning rock, and erosion can wear you away. Metamorphic activity could melt you back down. So if you want to be a trace for a long time, leave. The oldest unchanged piece of Earth wasn't even found on Earth. It was found on the Moon, where geological activity is less brutal. A monolith engraved with your name and biography buried on the Moon would be a good idea, except in, 5 to 10 billion years, our sun will expand into a red giant, engulfing the Earth and Moon, likely destroying them forever. So, a copper disk coated in aluminum and gold floating through space would be even better. The golden records aboard the Voyager spacecraft could exist for trillions of years. They could conceivably still be legible even after the last star goes dim. But your final type of ghost will be there too. It's what I call your ripple ghost, the diffused domino effect of all of your actions. There will be people, for example, a century from now, who could enjoy the shade of a tree you planted without ever wondering who put it there. The butterfly effect effectively guarantees us all a sort of anonymous, minute immortality. Just by being born, technically, you changed the universe irrevocably. The tiny and subtle but very real way your mass affects the planet Saturn right now will contribute in some extremely small way to exactly how and when its rings collapse. When the universe enters its heat death and it's the same temperature everywhere, the arrangement of matter in the universe will be the way it is because you existed. There will be no minds to observe it, so you won't be remembered, but you won't be annihilated. But so what? Oh, I've got ghosts that stick around. Newsflash, buddy, I'm not my ghosts. Okay, first of all, yeah, that's exactly why talk of fame and legacy gets so fizzly. For what? I won't be around to enjoy it, and eventually no one will be. But secondly, that's actually a pretty good definition of the self. You are everything you take with you when you die. Your secrets, the things you could have done or said but never did. That's what you are. Now, you could desperately try to do as much as you can and leave as much on the table as possible, but life is short. Too short? Well, Derek Parfit has pointed out that the brevity of life probably has nothing to do with its meaning. If your life was twice as long, would it have twice as much meaning? If we were all immortal, would the meaning of life suddenly be obvious? No. Meaning is separate from the sheer participation we crave. We just want to keep playing this game. And there's never been more game to play. Staggering amounts of what we want to experience have been tamed into beasts, so lightweight and so fast that, like ghosts, they can pass through walls. The soy bomb only lasted 36 seconds, but because a digital ghost of it lingers in Earth's largest haunted house, an average of 40 people have seen it every day for the last 30 years.
Gosh dang it. Okay.
Old music started outselling new music for the first time in 2015. Today, we each spend an average of 7 hours and 3 minutes a day in a haunted house full of avatars and messages from the living and dead alike. People and ideas and art in the past have become not just accessible, but accessible. We are on these ghost portals so much it's become pretty much the only way anyone finds companionship anymore. For crying out loud, more people on this planet own cell phones than toothbrushes. Documentality is the word Maurizio Ferraris gave to his ontology of traces, but it's also a great word for the extent to which day-to-day life in a society happens as documentation. In a society of high documentality, nearly every transaction, click, step, every memory, everything said or done is vulnerable to recording or simply comes into the world already pre-remembered. Not as an ephemeral oral exchange or a haphazard note, but as a high-fidelity, time-stamped, cataloged artifact. In such a world, it shouldn't be surprising if it starts to feel like there are more things you've said than things you could say. More ways things have been than ways things could be. The future isn't what it used to be. But don't get it twisted. Complete documentality is far from here. As I've mentioned before, our estimates of the current human population have about a 2 to 3% margin of error. That means that about this many people may or may not exist. And at any given moment in the US alone, there are about 40,000 deceased bodies whose identities are unknown. When Steve Fawcett failed to return to the Flying M Ranch in 2007, search and rescue efforts sent to find him discovered 8 previously unidentified airplane crashes that weren't him, but had been out there for, in some cases, decades. And when authorities searched for Gabby Petito, they found her and the bodies of at least 8 other people they weren't even looking for. We are not a documented species. We are a bunch of animals walking in and out of rooms. That said, something's changed. The last time a body was interred in the tomb of the unknown soldier was after the Vietnam War, but it was removed in 1998 after DNA testing connected it to a name, Michael Joseph Blassie. In 2014, prosecutors didn't need witnesses or security cam footage to construct what happened between Michelle Carter and Conrad Roy because they had these thousands of text messages. Despite living just 35 miles apart, Carter and Roy's relationship occurred almost entirely through text. So these are not pieces of their relationship. They're not evidence of the whole story. They are the whole story. These messages aren't missing the glances, the nods, the way he or she said it. This is all they each saw. And we have it all. An entire human relationship that happened as, and still is, undying documents. They're all online. Just a few taps deep in the world's largest ocean of documentation. And we just keep filling it up, turning more and more of what we do and see into ghosts, not just to remember, but to experience. When we instinctively watch events through our phones, it's not that we aren't living in the moment, it's that we are. Today, to be in the moment, you have to be fully in the moment. Every part of you, even the eye, you have to charge, and the mind you share with others. See what's happening? We are not just getting more ghosts, we are beginning to live as ghosts, as an account, a like, a post, a view, and it's great. We're spared the humilities of confrontation, and to be an image is to be something. Frederick Douglass and Sojourner Truth knew this. They had photographic images of themselves printed up. To own and control and sell your own figural ghost meant that you had power. But today, being a ghost surrounded by other ghosts causes a certain kind of newfangled anxiety. In his 1985 Amusing Ourselves to Death, Neil Postman describes what he calls the information-action ratio. Now, even though this book predates the World Wide Web, it may as well have been written about it. Let me ask you a modern version of a question he asks in here. How often does something you see on social media cause you to alter your plans for the day, or to take some action you would not otherwise have taken, or provide you with insight into some problem you are required to solve? When everything persists, irrelevance takes over. But the constant scroll of doom and pleasure and distraction isn't just irrelevant, is it? No, it's truly a ghost that can pass right through you. You can sit and stare for an hour and not remember a single thing you were served. We don't do that because it feels good. We do it because our minds want to be unsettled. A never-ending scroll of decontextualized news and horror and comedy and family and backflips isn't some unholy modern abomination of nature. It is exactly the niche we evolved to thrive in. Oh no, my brain evolved to eat berries in a cave. No, it evolved to reach the lushness of Southeast Asia and then cross the Wallace Line, not because it had to, and not because it could, but because what laid beyond was next, and we've got autoplay on. Hey, let's build a thing that floats and we could fit in it. We could call it a boat. Huh? What's that? Where will it take us? Away. We are not the universe experiencing itself. We are the universe ignoring itself. We are the universe looking for something else. In order to be here for long, we needed to not be here for long. I don't think it's the risk or the challenge that motivates us. Good stories and curiosity and adventure are the icing on the cake we really desire, unsettledness. Not knowing what's going to happen next can be exciting. Why? I think in the same way that long necks were selected in giraffes because no one was eating the way up high leaves, and in the same way that white fur was selected in polar mammals because no one was eating snow, imagination was selected in humans because no one was eating possibilities. As soft apes in the midst of climatic change, those who survived didn't wait for natural selection to provide an answer. No, they relied, as we still do today, not on evolution, but on resolution. On picturing and manipulating an analog world inside the theater of their own minds. Up here, we can imagine things that aren't hypotheticals. The distant past and future, the way things might be. We can recognize that collecting firewood now will be worth it. We can recognize that if there's no water here, we can bring it to us. The world is not our home. It's fuel for the fire up here where we really live. But because of that fire, we have made the whole world our home. Our ancestors are those hominids whose resolving never resolved. Now, sure, binge-watching TV or scrolling a social media feed are pretty different than crossing the Bering Strait, but they're still unsettling, right? What's going to happen next? Each next swipe brings you something different. Like the cognitive niche we built for ourselves, it never resolves. But unlike the travails of our ancestors, there's so much less danger. We can witness and interact safely from home, like pieces of luggage being moved at light speed without moving at all. The internet is a bounty of torques and velleities, pushes that spin us around but don't move us anywhere, and wishes not strong enough to inspire action. We're not amusing ourselves to death. We're amusing ourselves to life. A longer, scarier life. And as always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to pre-order your very own death clock. After you've answered its questions and pressed the red button, the button stays locked down. It cannot change. It's locked to your soul, to your life. Unless you want to give it to someone else or you made a mistake or something, in which case you can reset it by just poking this into the hole in the back. But you better pre-order now because time is literally running out. Hey, Vsauce, Michael here. This picture is about a year and a half old, but the pyramids themselves are much older than that. How much older? Well, think of it this way. The pyramids of Giza were as old to the ancient Romans as the ancient Romans are to us. When the pyramids were being built, there were woolly mammoths living on Wrangel Island. That's pretty old. But don't get too impressed. We often learn about the past in units, separate chapters, which distracts from the fact that many chapters aren't just nearer each other than you might think, they are often literally written on top of one another. Anne Frank and Martin Luther King Jr. were born in the exact same year. By the late 1960s, humans had come a long way. We had become a spacefaring species. But while we were sending the first probes to the moon and Venus and Mars, it was still illegal for a black person and a white person to marry in 16 states. The guillotine seems like a macabre artifact from bygone days, but it was last used by France to officially behead a criminal the year Star Wars came out. While General Custer was fighting native tribes on the American frontier, the Brooklyn Bridge was being built. And there were people alive then who would later watch the moon landing on television. We went from Custer's last stand to Armstrong's first steps within the span of a single human life. But all of these stories, from the pyramids to Julius Caesar to you watching this video right now, belong to an incredibly thin section in the book of human history. Compared to what human life has mainly been like here on Earth, our current societies are weird. Weird is also an acronym used by Jared Diamond in his new book, The World Until Yesterday. Jared Diamond wrote Guns, Germs, and Steel, Collapse, and he's here with me to talk about weird.
WEIRD, W-E-I-R-D, is an acronym for Western Educated, Industrial, Rich, and Democratic. When we talk about human nature, we're really talking about a narrow slice of society. Traditional societies were everybody in the world from the beginning of human evolution 6 million years ago until within the last 10,000 years, for the first time, we began encountering strangers, and then we developed writing, and then we acquired kings. All of these things that we take for granted are a matter of the last 5,000, 10,000 years, or the internet, or the media, they're a matter of the last few decades.
The relative recency of weird societies and the speed with which information and knowledge increases means that not that long ago, we thought some pretty strange things. For instance, in 1903, the New York Times predicted that building a flying machine would be possible in 1 to 10 million years. Later that very same year, the Wright brothers flew at Kitty Hawk. In 1908, it was said that no flying machine will ever fly from New York to Paris. Who made that foolish prediction? One of the Wright brothers. In 1962, the Decca Recording Company passed on a young rock band, saying, "We don't like their sound, and guitar music is on the way out." The band in question was the Beatles. Keith Moon and John Entwistle were said to have remarked about a band called the New Yardbirds. That band is so ill-conceived it will sink like a balloon or a zeppelin made out of lead. Well, Jimmy Page was not deterred. In fact, he took that phrase and made it his band's new name. He removed the A so it wouldn't be pronounced lead, and that's where we got Led Zeppelin. There is evidence the Nazis weren't entirely convinced Earth was a globe we lived on the outside of. Instead, they figured the Earth's continents were actually a lining on the inside of a hollow concave surface with the stars and moon and planets in the middle. Seriously. As the story goes, Dr. Heinz Fischer was sent to Rugen Island to spy on the British. Now, the curvature of the Earth would have made this impossible, but thinking the Earth was shaped like this, they pointed their telescopes up at a 45-degree angle. Needless to say, the experiment didn't work. The Eiffel Tower's inauguration and the Wall Street Journal and Starry Night and Coca-Cola and Nintendo and Adolf Hitler all began in 1889, as did a guy named Thomas Midgley Jr. Celebrated in his time, Midgley's legacy has since been tarnished by the negative consequences of his inventions. His list of contributions to society is impressively disastrous. In the late 20s, Midgley synthesized the first chlorofluorocarbon, CFC, for which he won the Society of Chemical Industries Perkin Medal. Only later did we realize all of those tons of CFCs we were emitting were eating away 4% of our atmosphere's protective ozone layer every decade, like a virus, creating a wound unlikely to completely heal until me and you have long been dead. In the early 1920s, Midgley discovered that by adding tetraethyl lead to gasoline, engine knocking could be reduced. The American Chemical Society gave him the 1923 Nichols Medal for the discovery. There were other, safer alternatives, but General Motors jointly owned a patent on tetraethyl lead with Midgley. They could make a profit on it, so they advertised it as the best option. And almost immediately, nearly every motor vehicle on Earth was spewing lead into our atmosphere and soil, which put it in our blood. Lead poisoning for decades. Currently, the reference for healthy children is a blood lead content of less than 5 micrograms per deciliter. After the popularization of Midgley's leaded gasoline, 88% of children in America had double that amount of lead in their blood. When leaded gasoline was finally phased out in the 1970s, that percentage fell to 9%. Lead is a neurotoxin. Even light exposure, like that caused by Midgley's invention, can cause a decrease in intelligence and an increase in antisocial behavior. Fordham University found that in young adults, the best predictor of delinquent and violent behavior is literally the lead content of their blood. Chillingly, the rise and fall of violent crimes by juveniles in the 20th century tracks significantly closely with the rise and fall of lead in their blood when they were preschoolers all over the world. Historian J.R. McNeil remarked that Midgley had more impact on the atmosphere than any other single organism in Earth's history. Midgley's final invention was even worse. Well, for him. In 1940, he contracted polio. To help his friends and family lift him from bed, he designed an intricate system of ropes and pulleys. As was the story of his life, the invention seemed brilliant at first, but 4 years later, he became accidentally entangled in the ropes and his own invention strangled him to death. Midgley's life took up 0.055% of human history. And roughly speaking, yours will too. To put that in perspective, let's time travel, starting right now. We begin 100,000 years ago, the beginning of modern humans. We are moving forward in time an entire millennia, 1,000 years every second. As you can see, not much is changing. Our modern world will briefly flash at the end. That's all it is. That's all it's been. So be careful not to miss it. And as always, thanks for watching. Hey, Vsauce, Michael here, and when you die, what happens to your body? It can be buried, or cremated, or donated to science, but are those your only options? I mean, what if I wanted to be taxidermied, like my friend here? What if I requested to have my body stuffed and mounted in some hilarious position, like a permanent high five, so people could high five my actual skin forever? Well, it turns out to be quite complicated. So let's begin with an easier and more flexible solution: cremation and ashes. 12 humans have walked on the moon, but 300 humans have been buried in outer space. With the right connections and budget, you can have a portion of your ashes launched into space. The very first space burial occurred in 1997, when a rocket deposited the ashes of 24 people into orbit around Earth. In 1999, human remains were first buried on the moon. A lunar prospector probe dropped some scientific instruments and some of the cremated remains of Eugene Shoemaker, co-discoverer of the comet Shoemaker-Levy 9. But the first human to have their remains leave our solar system will be Clyde Tombaugh, the guy who discovered Pluto. In 2006, some of his ashes were launched aboard the New Horizons probe, which will arrive near Pluto in 2015, take some recordings and pictures, and then continue on beyond our solar system. You don't need to get all outer spacey to have fun with your ashes. Right here on Earth, there are companies that will take carbon from your remains and expose them to extreme heat and pressure long enough that you wind up with a diamond made out of you. It can be cut and polished. One woman even had it done with the ashes of Meowie, her cat. The point here is that you can be quite creative with cremated remains, but ashes don't look like you did when you were alive. So let's revisit taxidermy. The shapes and combinations that animals have been taxidermied into are quite creative. For instance, an actual pig turned into an actual piggy bank, a bird light fixture, a goat that's also a bagpipe, doves turned into shoes, and of course, the guy who taxidermied his cat into a remote-controlled quadcopter. Taxidermy doesn't preserve every part of your body. It is taxidermy, the arrangement of skin, which is okay. I mean, taxidermy won't bother to preserve all of your internal organs, but your skin is your largest organ. Your skin comprises anywhere from 12 to 15% of your total body weight. Plus, it's an organ that people see and recognize you by. But here's one of the problems. When animals are taxidermied, their skin is removed and then mounted on a mannequin, a shape that resembles the animal but is made of wood or wool and wire or foam. That's fine for museums, but the use of a generic mannequin can lead to an animal that looks generic. All of the tiny, subtle, but very important features of the animal's cartilage, fat, muscles are more difficult to recreate after it's dead and all you have is its skin. That's why many taxidermists hesitate to taxidermy a person's beloved pet. Because in order to satisfy the client, an immense amount of specificity is required, even more so if you were trying to recreate a person. So taxidermy may not be the best way to preserve yourself or your daddy or your mummy. Mummies. What about them? Well, let's go back to the 19th century and Jeremy Bentham. When he died, the philosopher requested that his body be mummified as best as technology would allow, and his body dressed up in clothes and displayed at the University College of London. It periodically still is, but the mummification didn't turn out perfectly, so he's really just a skeleton dressed up in clothes and stuffed. The head wound up looking a bit too wrinkled and the color was off, and so a wax head was made. You can check out a 3D photograph of Jeremy Bentham online. And who could forget the dried out, mummified middle finger of Galileo? We still have it, and it's on display in Florence. It's a great thing to visit if you want a pivotal historical figure to flip you off. But we're looking for a way to preserve ourselves realistically as we appear while living. So let's take a look at embalming. Not all corpses are embalmed before they're buried, but embalming is a great technique for preserving a body, slowing down decomposition so it can stay above ground and be displayed a little bit longer. Now, if a body is embalmed really, really well, it can be preserved longer than you might think. Abraham Lincoln was embalmed so well that even though his coffin has been moved 17 times since he was buried, and the casket opened 5 times, on each of those occasions, including the most recent in 1901, people said, yeah, still looks like Lincoln. On an even more extreme scale are the bodies of people like Mao and Lenin, which continue to be on display to this day. The bodies require special treatments multiple times a week. The exact techniques and embalming fluids used to preserve Lenin are kept secret, but they've kept him preserved for more than 80 years. Well-embalmed bodies can be displayed before being buried in more positions than just lying down in a coffin. For instance, leaned up against a wall, or riding a motorcycle. Wow. But embalming doesn't last forever, and if you try to make it last forever, be prepared to spend a lot of money and time. One method that could be used on humans and has become popular with pets is similar to instant coffee: freeze drying. The process involves freezing the animal so that all of its water solidifies, and then using a partial vacuum with a pressure so low that the solid water instantly turns into vapor and escapes away, leaving a much, much lighter freeze-dried pet. Unfortunately, when it comes to preserving a human body as realistically as possible after death, these methods, freeze-drying, mummification, taxidermy, long-term embalming, are either unsatisfactory or impractical, with the exception possibly of a slightly newer method, plastination. It's the method used to prepare bodies for exhibits like Body Worlds. Essentially, plastination involves a specimen soaked in a volatile solvent and then placed in a polymer solution. In a low-pressure environment, the volatile solvent leaves the specimen, and the empty space is filled with the polymer solution. The specimen is flexible and can be put into a pose, and then the polymer hardened by using special gases. Human bodies that have been plastinated last a very long time, even at room temperature. But here's the crazy thing. It's free.
Controlling the
quite
center and
easily
opening up
donate
your
your
light
body
squared bishop
to the
for
Institute
development.
for
Okay,
Plastination.
wait, don't-
It counts as donating
Controlling-
your body to
they play
science. But here's the thing, you won't necessarily have control over what's done with your body.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, corpses
I
are
guess I could've
legally
just taken it.
not property. No one owns a corpse. Because a corpse is not legally a piece of property, no one can just do whatever they want with it. Your options are severely limited, and even if you specifically have requested, say, that your body be taxidermied, and all of your surviving kin agree and want it to happen, it's very unlikely that a mortuary would allow that to happen, and historically, the law sides with the mortuary. For example, in 1994, David Eugene Russell requested that when he died, his body be skinned, his skin tanned into leather, and that leather used to bind a book of his writings. He wanted this to happen, as
remember
did
being
his
stuck
surviving
here.
widow. But the mortuary refused to do it, and the court sided with the mortuary. So even if you have a really cool idea for how your body could be embalmed forever and
here.
displayed in a funny, weird, or bizarre way, you're not going to get permission to do so. Plastination winds up being one of your only options, but you won't have a lot of control over what happens to you once plastinated. But hold on a second. In 1998, Anthony Noel Kelly was arrested for stealing anatomical specimens from the Royal College of Surgeons. Now, he claimed that he was not guilty of theft because a corpse is not a piece of property. He was
dang
merely
it.
guilty of the mistreatment of a corpse. But the judge ruled that because these anatomical specimens had been especially prepared by licensed and skilled workers at the college,
I see.
they had become property. So here's something really strange. If you found a way to get your body taxidermied for the benefit of medical science, in doing so, you may actually
Gosh, dang
become a piece of ownable property. So in a way, being taxidermied may be the best way to allow your survivors,
more.
your loved ones, to legally and literally have you forever. And as always, thanks for watching. Hey, Vsauce, Michael here. Where are your fingers? Seriously, it's a pretty easy question. You should be able to answer it. But how do you know? How does anyone know anything? You might say, well, I know where my fingers are. I'm looking right at them. Or I can touch them. I can feel them. They're right here. And that's good. Your senses are a great way to learn things. In fact, we have way more than the usual 5 senses we talk about. For instance, your kinesthetic sense, proprioception. This is what the police evaluate during a field sobriety test. It allows you to tell where your fingers and arms and head and legs and your
dumb.
body is
That's-
all in
is that
relation
the
to each
trap?
other
Is that-
without having to look or touch other things. We have way more than 5 senses. We have at least twice as many and then some. But they're not perfect. There are optical illusions, audio illusions, temperature sensation illusions, even tactile illusions. Can you turn your tongue upside down? If so, perfect. Try this. Run your finger along the outer edge of the tip of your upside down tongue. Your tongue will be able to feel your finger, but in the wrong place. Our brains never needed to develop an understanding of upside down tongue touch. So when you touch the right side of your tongue, when it's flipped over to your left side, you perceive a sensation on the opposite side where your tongue usually is, but isn't when it's upside down. It's pretty freaky and cool, and a little humbling, because it shows the limits of the accuracy of our senses, the only tools we have to get what's out there in here. The philosophy of knowledge, the study of knowing, is called epistemology. Plato famously said that the things we know are things that are true, that we believe, and that we have justification for believing. Those justifications might be irrational, or they might be rational. They might be based on proof, But don't get too confident, because proven is not a synonym for true. Luckily, there are things that we can know without needing proof, without needing to even leave the house, things that we can know as true by reason alone. These are things that we know a priori. An example would be the statement, all bachelors are unmarried. I don't have to go survey every bachelor on Earth to know that that is true. All bachelors are unmarried because that's how we define the word bachelor.
Okay.
Of course, you have to know what the words bachelor and unmarried mean in the first place. Oh, you do? Okay, perfect, that's great. But how do you know? This time I mean functionally. How do you know? Where is knowledge biologically in the brain? What are memories made out of? We are a long way from being able to answer that question completely, but research has shown that memories don't exist in the brain in single locations. Instead, what we call a memory is likely made up of many different complex relationships all over the brain between lots of brain cells, neurons. A major cellular mechanism thought to underlie the formation of memories is long-term potentiation, or LTP. When one neuron stimulates another neuron repeatedly, that signal can be enhanced over time, LTP, wiring them more strongly together, and that connection can last a long time, even an entire lifetime. A collection of different brain cells, neurons that fire together in a particular order over and over again frequently and repeatedly, can achieve long-term potentiation, becoming more sensitive to each other and more ready to fire in the exact same way later on in the future. They're a physical thing in your brain firing together more easily because you strengthened that pattern of firing. You memorized. This branching forest of firing friends looks messy, but look closer. It could be the memory of your first kiss, a living souvenir of the event. If I were to go into your brain and cut out those cells, could I make you forget your first kiss? Or could I make you forget where your fingers are? Only if I cut out a lot of your brain, because memories aren't just stored in one relationship, they're stored all over the brain. The events leading up to your first kiss are stored in one network, the way it felt or the way it smelled in different networks, all added up together, making what you call the memory of your first kiss. How many memories can you fit inside your head? What is the storage capacity of the human brain? The best we can do is a rough estimate, but given the number of neurons in the brain involved with memory and the number of different connections a single neuron can make, Paul Reber at Northwestern University estimated that we can store the digital equivalent of about 2.5 petabytes of information. That's the equivalent of recording a TV channel continuously for 300 years. That's a lot of information. That is a lot of information about skills you can do and facts and people you've met, things in the real world. The world is real, right?
Let me think it.
How do you know? It's a difficult question, but it's not rocket science. Instead, it is asking whether or not rocket scientists even exist in the first place. The theory that the sun moved around the Earth worked great. It predicted that the sun would rise every morning, and it did. It wasn't until later that we realized what we thought was true might not be. So, do we, or will we ever know true reality? Or are we stuck in a world where the best we can do is be approximately true, discovering more and more useful theories every day, but never actually reaching true, objective, actual reality? Can science or reason ever prove convincingly that your friends and YouTube videos and your fingers actually exist beyond your mind? That you don't just live in the Matrix? No. Your mind is all that you have. Even if you use instruments like a telescope or particle accelerators, the final stop for all of that information is ultimately you. You are alone in your own brain, which technically makes it impossible to prove that anything else exists. It's called the egocentric predicament. Everything you know about the world out there depends on and is created inside your brain. This mattered so much to Charles Sanders Peirce that he drew a line between reality, the way the universe truly is, and what he called the phaneron, the world as filtered through our senses and bodies, the only information we can get. If you want to speak with certainty, you live in, that is, you react to and remember and experience your phaneron, not reality. The belief that only you exist and everything else, food, the universe, your friends, are all figments of your mind, is called solipsism. There is no way to convince a solipsist that the outside world is real. And there is no way to convince someone who doubts that the universe wasn't created just 3 seconds ago, along with all of our memories. It's a frightening realization that we don't always know how to deal with. There's even the Matrix defense. In 2002, Tonda Lynn Ansley shot and killed her landlady. She argued that she believed she was in the Matrix, that her crimes weren't real. By using the Matrix defense, she was found not guilty by reason of insanity, because the opposite view is just way more healthy and common. It's called realism. Realism is the belief that the outside world exists independently of your own phaneron. Rocks and stars and Thora Birch would continue to exist even if you weren't around to experience them. But you cannot know realism is true. All you can do is believe. Martin Gardner, a great source for math magic tricks, explained that he is not a solipsist because realism is just way more convenient and healthy, and it works. As to whether it bothered him that he could never know realism was true, he wrote, "If you ask me to tell you anything about the nature of what lies beyond the phaneron, my answer is, how should I know? I am not dismayed by ultimate mysteries. I can no more grasp what is behind such questions as my cat can understand what is behind the clatter I make while I type this paragraph." Humble stuff. What strikes me is the cat. Cats do not understand keyboards, but they know that keyboards are a fun place to be. It's a great way to get the attention of a human. They're warm and exciting, surrounded by noises and flashing lights. Plus, cats love to get their scent on whatever they can, a mark of their existence. We aren't that much different, except instead of keyboards, we have the mysteries of the universe. We will never be able to understand all of them. We won't be able to ever answer every single question, but walking around in those questions, exploring them, is fun. It feels good. And as always, thanks for watching. Do you want more unanswered questions? Well, you're in luck. Today, 9 other amazing channels on YouTube have made videos about questions we still haven't fully answered. All Time 10s has organized them, and to watch them all, click the annotation at the end of this video or the link at the top of the description. Enjoy. Hey, Vsauce, Michael here. Not knowing what to do with your hands, or offering a handshake when the other person offers a fist bump.
Gosh dang it. I want to see this review.
Forgetting someone's name. Not having anything to say and forgetting your phone at home so you can't be distracted by it. Getting caught staring at a stranger. striking up a conversation with someone you don't know in a bathroom, someone oversharing, telling a group
Oh my
too much
gosh.
information, overhearing a couple breaking up, noticing food in someone's teeth, but not telling them, and well, now it's been too long and bringing it up would be weird. Smelling a fart in an elevator that wasn't yours, but well, now you can't even react to it or mention that you've noticed it or pretend you even know what a fart is. All of those things are awkward. We don't like awkwardness. It makes us uncomfortable, cringe. But what is awkwardness? Why is it good? And who is the main character of the universe? To really understand awkwardness, we need to put it in context with the entire family of forces that guide social behavior. Think of this sheet of cardboard as a list of all possible behaviors. It's not infinite because of the limits of science and biology.
Oh, yeah.
You
I
can't
remember
move faster than light or be in two places at once. You can't wear pants made out of molten lead. Next, there are legal limits, the laws of the state. They delineate what you agree not to do, lest the authorities punish you. Murder, stealing, speeding. What's left is molded by the finer tool of social expectations. It's not illegal to chew with your mouth open or not cover a sneeze on a crowded bus or act disrespectfully, but it is frowned upon, punished not by the police, but by social ostracism, public opprobrium, being called rude, gross, mean, annoying. Awkwardness is the finest tool. It sands social dynamics by smoothing out what even etiquette doesn't rule on. It's not a violation of the laws of physics to accidentally hug someone for longer than they expected. It's not against the law either, and the etiquette for how long a hug should last isn't black and white. But it is awkward. Like touching a hot stove or getting a parking fine or losing friends, awkwardness nudges us to avoid certain actions in the future and smooth things out when they happen. People who demonstrate self-consciousness when needed are communicating cooperative intentions, which helps them get along well with others. It's no coincidence that brains susceptible to feeling occasional awkwardness would become so common. They're successful at cooperating, at social life. Feeling awkward shows that you understand and are keen on smooth social exchanges. Now, too much or too little concern for social rules isn't healthy, but research has found that just the right amount is great. When a person shows remorse or embarrassment or awkward discomfort when appropriate, others perceive them as being more trustworthy and their actions as more forgivable. And it's not just perception. Such individuals also tend to be more objectively pro-social when tested, kinder, more generous. Even when a person is completely oblivious to a faux pas they've committed, awkwardness still arises. People around them can feel uncomfortable.
I guess
it's
enough for
called
this for today.
vicarious embarrassment. And it's
Goodness
a
gracious, I
function of
suck at
empathy,
chess.
the
I
ability
guess I'll
to
be better at
feel
some
what
point.
others feel,
Maybe I'll play more.
or
I don't know.
will
Okay, bye.
feel when or if they realize what they've just done. The more